Hello and welcome to Solomoriah Speaks, Episode 5, Raw. Today I'm going to talk about the practice or act of running an old school game like my basic fantasy RPG in a rules as written or raw fashion. I started seeing raw as an abbreviation a couple of years ago, never really understood it. But it's becoming more common, and I've actually had a player leave my game because I don't run my own game rules as written. Too long, didn't watch. I think it's nuts. There you go. If you want my opinion on the matter, you can leave now. Bye. If you want to know why, hang with me. I think it's nuts to play an old school game rules as written because old school games weren't designed to be used that way. Old school games are vague. In fact, any rules light game is vague. It has to be. It can't cover every scenario. It can't cover every situation. And old school games and games like that depend on the game master's fiat. The game master's ability to simply say, this is what happens or this is how we're going to resolve this. And that's the rule. Because in an old school game, the number one rule is the game master is always right. And that always comes across wrong. It is kind of wrong. I always prefer just to call it fiat. The arbitrary ability to choose whatever is desired. Fiat is the game master's main tool in an old school game. It is the primary way the game master tailors the game to his or her players and situations. Every game master who plays a game that requires them to use a fiat develops their own style, has their own preferred rules, their own preferred ways of resolving things. And that's fine. As long as you're using fiat not as a toy or as a weapon to beat your players with, but as a tool to make the game better. Then this is good. This is what the game is about. This is what old school is about. But this is why playing rules as written is an exercise in frustration, in my opinion. The game is vague. There are things left out. There are things that aren't detailed as much as they might be. There are situations that will arise when you're playing the game that the rules just don't really cover. Or maybe the rules lead to what you might think is inappropriate or just plain wrong result. The game master's fiat allows those things to be changed on the fly. And the game master has to know how to do that, has to learn how to do that. No, you don't start the game knowing those things. You have to learn them. And this is the important thing, I guess, from my perspective, playing rules as written means you're going to use just the rules that are written down. You're only going to do things that the game allows. You're not going to allow things that the game doesn't allow. This so restricts the game as to make it, if not unplayable, certainly not nearly as much fun as it could be. Now, I could give you lots of examples of situations that I think rules as written doesn't handle very well in an old school game. There's one real obvious one, and I'm going to tell a story. I had a game master. He was a new game master. He was new to basic fantasy. I think he was new to game mastering in general. Posted online that he was playing basic fantasy, running basic fantasy, and he couldn't understand how anybody could play this game because it's so lethal. 0 hit points and you're dead. Before I saw the message, several other people commented, giving house rules and options that they use to nerf the effects of death and dying in their games. And the original poster came in and said, no, he said, I want to play the game rules as written. And I came in and I said, in the back of the book, in the Game Master section, there is a section on death and dying. A section back here that deals with, here we go, dealing with players. And we have a lot of stuff in here. But an optional rules, death and dying, page 152 of release 107, the 3rd edition core rules. The death and dying section offers several alternatives, ways to nerf the effects of dying. Saving throw at 0 hit points so that instead of dead, you're just unconscious and out of the fight. Or the negative hit point rule that everyone seems to be familiar with, where you fall below 0, you're bleeding out until somebody stabilizes you, but you're still alive down to a certain negative number. The standard negative 10 rule, you're dead at negative 10. Variations on that, a lot of options. A few options in the book, a lot more ways to actually do it if you wanted to tinker with it, but the book presents those options. And I said, these house rules that are being suggested, some of them are just basically the optional rules that are in the back of the book. Rules I wrote, which means in my mind they're rules as written. But this guy said no, he was trying to play the game rules as written, so he wasn't going to use any options. Okay. Well, there's no helping him. The game's not designed to be used that way. I never intended anyone to play basic fantasy that way. Yeah, that's what it says at the beginning of the book. That's what it says in the combat section. 0 hit points and you're dead. The rule book, however, actually says not to throw your character sheet away yet, because later in the book comes the optional rules that the game master can choose from. And I expect game masters to choose an approach that works for them, a way that fits their game, that suits their players and suits them. This is how the game is intended to be played. And I think it's nuts to try to play it strictly without options or supplements or anything. I think that's nuts. Without rulings. I think you're not going to have a good game. Now, having said that, anyone who knows me online, has seen my postings and my comments on the game, knows that I have frequently told people when they're starting out as a new game master with Basic Fantasy or Iron Falcon, my games, not to use a bunch of supplementary rules, not to use a bunch of add-ons, especially Basic Fantasy, which has a very healthy ecosystem of supplements in our downloads page, in our showcase, and on our forum. We have different layers of supplementary rules, along with just ordinary house rules that people just throw out there when you ask how you handle something. I'm always telling people when they start playing the game new as a green game master with a new game to just play with what's in the book. That sounds a lot like rules as written, doesn't it? Just play with what's in the book. Just use this book. Don't add supplements to it. Just use this book. It's not rules as written. It's playing the game the way it was meant to be played. Which means that even though you're just using this book, you're going to make rulings. You're going to have situations that don't come up, and you're going to have to learn how to make them. You have to learn to make rulings to become an old school game master. You have to learn how to do it. And you have to learn how to do it fairly well to be good. The only way you learn is through experience. I expect that every new game master is going to go through the rule book. They're going to go back there to the back section, read the sections on dealing with players and on optional rules. And they're going to choose the ones that suit them. They're going to choose the ones that they like. Because those rules as written are meant to work. They work adequately as they're written. But I always tell people not to use a bunch of supplements, because if you're new, you don't know if you like this game or not unless you play this game. If you're playing this game with a bunch of options and supplements and a whole pile of house rules, you're not really playing this game anymore. How do you know if you like it? Once you've played it a little bit, you can always add in supplements. You can always add in alternatives and so forth. And of course, play it and you're going to make rulings. You have a game, a situation comes up, you make a ruling on the spot to get through the game. And later you're thinking about it and you're not happy with how it went down. Maybe you're just not happy with the way it worked. Maybe you feel like there should be a rule for that. It may be something that, isn't common, but maybe it's going to be common for you for some reason. Maybe it's your style, or maybe you've got a player with a weird habit of doing something strange in combat. We've all had them. But you're not happy with the results of your decision. And you go back and you read the rule book, and maybe you start looking at the supplements online, and you ask on the forum or on the Facebook page, this is what happened, I'm not happy with it. Anybody have a suggestion for how to deal with this? And you get offered you'll get offered house rules. Seriously. Somebody will offer you something. Or you'll find a supplement that's appropriate, or somebody will point you at a supplement that's appropriate to your question. Maybe it was a combat situation and the answer could involve an optional rule from the combat options supplement, or maybe it's a thief, and somebody suggests maybe you should look at the thief option supplement for something that would work there. We've got supplements for all sorts of things. And you go ahead and you add part or all of a supplement to your game because, hey, that fills in that blank. That works better than my rule. Or maybe you get a house rule offered to you that you like. Or maybe, heck, maybe you think about it and you think of a better way yourself. Great. That's great. It's part of the learning process, part of learning to become a better game master. But you started the game with the core. So you learn about the core and you learn how it works and how it's put together and how you can change it, how you can tinker with it and make it work for you. And then you add supplements and you've got a player that really wants to play an illusionist, so you go with the illusionist supplement, or a half ogre for half, so you go to half humans, or whatever, ranger, paladin. We have supplements for all kinds of things. Even a hobgoblin player character is possible. We've got supplements for that. And you add supplements that are appropriate to your game, to your style, to your world. Understanding that they are adding to and changing the experience of playing basic fantasy, but you're learning to do it. And I'm going to say this about every old school game. Start out with what's in the core book. Play the game the way it was meant to be played so that you can learn how that works, how that feels, and then you know what you can do with it from there. You can know how to expand it, how to add stuff to it, how to fit stuff in, how to make up your own house rules or incorporate other people's or use supplementary rules if there are any. Not every old school game has a supplement system like we have, but still there's options. Learn to play the game the way it was meant to be played, and then do whatever. If you come to basic fantasy as an experienced game master, well, if you've played old school games as a game master, you are going to recognize a lot of this stuff, and you're going to bring your own style with you, because if you've been playing old school games, you've already developed one. I will be honest with you, I'm running an Iron Falcon playtest right now with an adventure that I'm not ready to announce yet. And I have been using a lot of procedures taken straight out of basic fantasy, even though it's Iron Falcon. I'm using Iron Falcon's tables and numbers and so forth, but certain procedures I'm just doing the same way because I'm used to it. And my players are used to it, and it works okay. We don't quite follow the initiative rules as presented. For example, in Iron Falcon, I use an initiative rule that is mostly basic fantasy, but that I have adapted and extended in ways that my players are familiar with because they've seen it before. It's just how I do things. Everybody will develop their own style. That's good. That's good. Learn your style. Develop a style. Develop a style that makes your players happy, that makes you happy, and feel free to use it. Adapt your games to fit your style, adapt your style to fit your games. As long as everybody's having a good time, you must be playing it right. Now, that's my point. It's not hypocritical for me to say, as a new game master, play with us in the book. And in the same motion say, I don't believe in playing rules as written. I think playing rules as written is a mistake. It's not hypocritical because I'm talking about playing the game as it was meant to be played, not strictly as it was written down like you're some kind of a lawyer. The only way that's fun is if you're a lawyer, and I'm not even sure it'd be fun for lawyers. It doesn't make sense. It's not the way the game was meant to be used. And I think I've covered everything. So thank you for coming. Thanks for watching the video to the end. Feel free to comment down below if there's anything you'd like to say on the subject. I'd love to hear from you. And have a nice day. Thank you.